One of the biggest challenges companies have in regards to OSHA data is figuring out what is and what is not an OSHA recordable incident. Hello, my name is Michael Stockton. I'm the CEO of AMAX. I'm going to break down today actually how you can do this consistently, get it done consistently right per what OSHA says, and just kind of follow those guidelines consistently so you can get this data actually accurate, and then you could leverage this OSHA data as an asset for your organization. All right, so let's talk about what is and what is not a recordable incident. In regards to workers' compensation incidents, there's a couple of key pieces that you're going to talk about. And I want to break down kind of what these are and then how you're going to consistently do this and consistently do it well. All right, so first thing, we're going to talk about death. These are kind of the main categories. Death, days away from work, so lost work days. So if they miss time, restricted days, so if they have to do restricted, if they can't do their full duty job, restricted time, medical treatment beyond first aid, med beyond first aid, and this is the most confusing one, this med beyond first aid one. It's also one of the most common reasons that it's recordable. Loss of consciousness, and then last one is diagnosis of significant injury or illness. Significant injury or illness, and this is typically going to be a cancer. It's going to be a significant injury or illness of that regards. All right, so let's talk about these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different categories. These ones are all pretty straightforward. Death, days away from work, or missed time. In regards to workers' compensation, we're going to follow these. A lot of times are going to be triggers for a recordable incident. If they have lost time, it's a days away. If they're restricted or if they're going on light duty, it's a restricted or job transfer. So these are pretty simple and pretty straightforward as far as understanding what is and what is not OSHA recordable. Loss of consciousness, significant injury or illness. Also, these are typically pretty clear. These are pretty clear. Did they lose consciousness? Were they diagnosed with significant injury or illness? This is going to be a much less common things that are happening, but also relatively clear in regards to whether or not. This one, medical treatment beyond first aid. This is the one that trips companies up the most. This is the one that trips companies up the most because what the heck does that mean? Did they get medical treatment beyond first aid? Well, I don't know. What is considered first aid? All right, well, OSHA, in its brilliance, they actually do a really nice job at this. They very clearly define what is considered first aid in regards to recordable, in regards to what is and what is not recordable. So they very, very clearly state what is considered first aid and what is not considered first aid to be able to fall into this category of medical treatment beyond first aid. So I'm going to post a link below this video, and you'll be able to see it. It's listed in 1904.7, parentheses B, parentheses 5, parentheses 3. OSHA clearly defines what this is, and I'm not going to write them all up on the board. You can follow it along in the link below. Here's what they are. Non-prescription medication at non-prescription strength. So this is if they prescribe a Tylenol. I'm not prescribed. If there's a Tylenol or if there is an Advil, something of that regards, that's an over-the-counter. Where companies will get tripped up here, they say, well, I'm going to give you ibuprofen, but the doctor writes a script for it. Let's say I think it's 200 milligrams is the over-the-counter strength, and they write a script for, let's say, 800 milligrams. And that's a prescription strength. So understanding that difference, and this is where the relationship with your treating physicians really come into play, understanding what is recordable and what is not recordable, because a lot of times companies are inadvertently getting a much higher recordable rate than they have to just because of the prescribing practices of those treating physicians. So that's number one, administering tetanus immunization, cleaning, flushing, or soaking of wounds on the surface of the skin, use of the wound covering such as Band-Aids. These things are considered first aid. So these things are considered first aid. So that would not be beyond first aid. So if the treatment is any of these things, use of eye patches, drilling of a fingernail, toenail to relieve pressure, temporary immobilization, elastic bandages, non-rigid means of support, use of finger guards, massages, drinking liquids for relief of stress. You can see the complete list below. And here's the key to this list. If it's on this list, it's first aid. If it's on the list that OSHA gives you, it is considered first aid. If it is not on the list, it is considered treatment beyond first aid. If it is on the list, if it's one of it's about 15 things, roughly, on the list. If it's one of those 15 things, it is considered first aid. If it is not on the list, it's beyond first aid. I'm going to say that again because it's a huge, huge point. If it is on the list, it is considered first aid. If it is not on the list, it is considered medical treatment beyond first aid. Huge point. OSHA does a very good job at clarifying this, exactly what those things are that are considered first aid. And they also have done a lot of, if you read some of the OSHA forums, they're like, well, what about this time? This thing happened. Is that, in this circumstance, blah, 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 blah. And OSHA will say, if it's on the list, if it's not on the list, it's medical treatment beyond first aid. If it's on the list, it is first aid. Well, what about this? They'll say. People will write in. What about this scenario? If it's on the list, it's first aid. If it's not on the list, it's medical treatment beyond first aid. OSHA is very, very clear about this and consistently responding in the same way. So they're giving this guidance. Understand what that criteria is. Have it at the ready so that you can make that difference. These things are all they're pretty clear whether they're recordable or not. This is where companies a lot of times get tripped up. Again, my name is Michael Stack. I'm the CEO of AMAX. Remember, your work today in workers' compensation can have a dramatic impact on your company's bottom line, but it will have a dramatic impact on someone's life. So be great.